Cindy Horton,
Yes.
welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Go ahead and introduce yourself and maybe what your claim to fame locally is, like what you do, and yeah.
Okay. So, Cindy Horton. I'm the executive director of Rhea County Community Center. Have been in that position technically for 4 years. In the previous 4 years, I was volunteering to direct as the board chair.
Board chair.
Yep.
So there wasn't an executive director.
Right. And we can, as we get into the story, I'll kind of be more clear as to why we went that route. But I was born in Florida, raised in Texas, and moved to Chattanooga in middle school.
Okay.
And then landed here with my husband after we both attended school in Memphis. So he was in medical school. I was in PT school, didn't know each other. He grew up here in Dayton. I graduated PT school and decided to stay and work in Memphis, and we met each other there.
So y'all met in Memphis.
Mm-hmm.
That's amazing.
Yeah, right in downtown Memphis.
And what was that like?
What was the meeting like, or was Memphis like?
Both, actually. What was early life? Meeting Chris. And West Tennessee. It's almost like a different state.
It's a completely different state. As I tell everybody, it's like we called it Eastern Arkansas and North Mississippi.
Right.
Like it did not feel like Tennessee, having grown up in Chattanooga and him in Dayton. But it was great while we were there. We actually met out. It's a funny story, and I won't go into it today. But and it was just one of those, like you're my person, and it was quick. And so he was still finishing at medical school, and I was working full time. And then we decided to stay there for his residency. And in the meantime, we had our first daughter, Hannah. And I continued to work until she was about 18 months old and was able to job share so I could be home with her. It was hard leaving her for that many hours a day. And we didn't have any family in town, so it was daycares and things like that. So he finished up his residency there. And we had a second daughter, Christian, while we were there. But since he was from here, he had an agreement with the hospital board. This is an underserved area, medically speaking, so there's financing and funding for that. And so he had an agreement with Rhea Medical Center to come back and work, and they covered his medical school costs.
Oh, wow. What a great program.
It's a fabulous program. It's benefited a lot of people.
Because it brings good doctors.
Brings good doctors in, and this is where he wanted to be. Like, he didn't want to be anywhere else.
So it worked out nicely.
Yeah, it was perfect. And they helped him set up his practice. They got him going the first 4 years. That was his commitment. And of course, we weren't going to go anywhere. I'd never lived in a small town before. Chattanooga was the smallest.
What town from Tennessee? I mean, from Florida.
Tampa. But I was really young. So Tampa to San Antonio to Katy, which is outside of Houston. Okay. And then we moved to Chattanooga, which to me was a small town at the time. And then coming from Memphis to this area, and this was Chris's hometown. He moved here in third grade. Dad was football coach, all that wonderful stuff. I was like, wow, there's no Targets here. I emailed Target about 6 months after he moved here. I'm like, I think this is a great location for a Target. And they basically wrote back, there'll never be a Target in Rhea County. So it was worth a shot.
You sound like Annika, my wife. She did the same thing with Aldi. She moved in and was like, hey.
Yeah, when we lived in Memphis, it was like Kroger, mall, everything's within 15 minutes. And especially where you're worried and you have to deal with traffic. But so we moved here. And of course, I had family in Hickson area, so that's great. Chris had some family here, and so we fell right in pretty quickly and found our home church and found the why almost immediately because I knew I needed to plug in somewhere. So I was a physical therapist. I worked in Memphis, then eventually, stopped working when you have 2 kids. Paying for childcare doesn't really make it worth working at some point, and for a mom. And I wanted to be with them. But I still had all this physical therapy and I loved the job. Like I still have amazing memories. And I wanted to be able to use some of that. So came and tried out the Y and put Hannah into tumbling. She was 4. It's like, let's start with tumbling. And I remember walking into that building. It's the building we're in currently. And I was like, oh, this is a Y? Like, this is a Y? Because the Ys I know were Houston, Chattanooga, and Memphis. And I was like, okay, well, we'll see what this is all about. And I just remember it was just in a different state of repair at that time.
Gotcha.
And so started doing group exercise classes, there, taking some great instructors. Jennifer Van Meter was instructing at the time, and Jeannie Martin. I used to do her morning classes, and then Jeannie's like, "Hey, I think you could sub for me." I was like, "Oh, sure, I can sub," and that fed right into physical therapy. So I started doing that and teaching, and somehow found my way onto the board, which is what happens when you invest in an organization, especially a nonprofit. So we just started kind of building the community. When we moved back, when Chris moved back and I came with him, the option was, hey, we can go live in Chattanooga and you can work in Dayton. There's so much more offered, especially this is almost 22 years ago. It was 22 years ago. And I knew Chattanooga. I'd gone to high school there. We could do that, but we're like, no, we really want to live in the community that you're working in, so we can invest in that community. And that was probably the best decision we could have made. And I don't regret for 1 second moving back here. This is a really special town. So.
Yeah. Did you feel like you had to transition from bigger cities to Dayton, and what was the most difficult transition for you?
Well, like I said, shopping.
just a shopping.
Like just getting I remember going. So people who've been around for a while remember that Walmart was in the strip center where Goodwill is.
I've heard this.
Yes, and it was not 24 hours, and they would stock in the middle of the day, and the rows were like super tight, and they were just like having 2 kids in the grocery cart. I'm like, what are we doing? Like, what is it? And it was just a Walmart, so there was no grocery. So then you'd have to go to, I think it was Bilo at that point. And there was another, Ingles maybe right there. So I remember just being like, wow, this is different. I can't get down this aisle because they're stocking, and it's just like total first world problems. But, and then there was also a Goodies over there, and that was the only place really at that point to buy clothes in town. And I remember it also was just so tight, and I remember trying to push the stroller around, and those early memories of, and now I just drive to Target, just drive to Hickson. But we'll both say that we know the Lord pulled us out of big cities, because if we had stayed in a place like Memphis with our family, the pressures would have been so different on our children and keeping up with the Joneses, right. And that kind of stuff kind of pulls away from your, like, what you want your family to be. And that was much easier to maintain here in a small town, and then being close to family. I also remember I was here early on, and I'd gotten my mom to come sit with the girls because I needed to get my license changed. I needed to go, I don't know, like to the bank, and I needed to go somewhere else, and I'm like, it's going to take me half a day, Mom. I need you to come take the girls. I was in 30 minutes. I was like, you will not believe. I went and got my license changed. I got the information at the bank changed all in 30 minutes. So like just the convenience, and it's a little bit different now than it used to be, was really a good change for us.
That's how I felt moving here from Atlanta. Everything is just any errands. It's everything's so far away. Atlanta, we joke about Atlanta's an hour away from itself.
Yeah,
like no matter where you start, it's going to be an hour.
Yeah, I just had to drive through there a couple of times to go help my oldest move into her apartment. And it's like there was traffic north of Atlanta, there was traffic in Atlanta, and there's traffic south of Atlanta. Yeah. And it took forever.
Yeah, yeah. Imagine trying to...
Yeah, well, that's Chris's comment every time. He's like, I cannot imagine living here. I could never live here. I can't imagine. I'm like, I know.
What we say is, I can't believe we lived here.
Yeah. You've seen the light.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, wow, this is amazing. Okay, so you plug into the Y, and you get involved. Did you say you started teaching classes?
I did.
Yeah. And then you got on the board. What then?
I was on the board for a few years, and those were some tough years for the Y. There were a lot. So the Y, I don't know how much you want to go into this. The Y was founded in the early 80s.
I actually do want to go into it.
Yeah, early 80s. And it was really a cool, the way things happened was really cool. There were families who had children that were, elementary age and maybe middle school, and they wanted tumbling and gymnastics for their kids. And they had a guy here in town and a lady. So it was Bill Rush and Delora Kinsfather, I think, if I'm getting this right. And they may have come earlier or later into the scene, but they were very good instructors for gymnastics. And so they started doing some classes. And the families were like, we need this for our kids. So this is Dayton in a nutshell. Families and parents love their children well here, and they will do really incredible things for them to give them what they need. what they think is important. And that's what these families did. And I would name names, but I would be sure to leave someone out. But most of them are still in this community, and they are still supporters of RC3.
Wow.
Right. And they are supporters of things people don't even know.
Was the nexus at a church or something like this, or was it just
no?
a
I mean, yeah, it was a hodgepodge of families that knew each other. To name, I mean, I could name a few: Swaffords, Dillards. I'm going to forget Nevins. There are several. There's a plaque at RC3 that has their names on it. So they ended up somehow getting a YMCA charter. They should never have been able to get a charter. We don't qualify. I don't know. They were really good at what they did.
Have them call Target.
Right. Can you call Target? You did it once. So they got this charter that we didn't qualify for, like per capita income, number of people in the community. We still probably wouldn't qualify to have a YMCA, but they got one. And they started off in, I believe, a room or an area of city school. But they were also in, there used to be a building across from First Methodist Church that was a bottling company. And then I think they were in there for a period of time too. So recently, they're doing that new cafetorium at Dayton City School. I don't know if you saw the Facebook pictures, but when they took everything down, there's the old Y paintings on the wall. So like all the tumble tykes is what they called it.
Oh, wow.
And there's Y. I mean, it's really cool. They got lots of pictures of it. So they were in there for a long time. And then in the 90s, they got the building we're in now.
And it was already there, obviously, because that construction is older.
So that was, I always get this wrong, but I'm pretty sure it was Ray Central High School. So that was their gym. And then there was a building where the annex is now. That was the actual school. And that one, I think, either burned or was torn down or something. And then that other section was, so the two end sections were newer than the original, but the building we're in now is about, I think it was built in the 60s.
It looks like that, yeah.
So they moved in there, but it was a nonprofit in a small town, and it was always a battle. And I remember I guess we moved here in 2002, and I probably went on the board about 2005. And there were a few years where it was just so tight, and, cost of labor is high. And I remember as a board member getting calls like, hey, can you do your donation now? We need to make payroll, that kind of thing. And so there were some really hard days, sleepless nights, and seeing how we can make this thing go. And we kind of turned it around, even as an independent YMCA. And added some classes, added some sports, and soccer, of course, started flourishing. And we had people come in and build into those programs. And I ended up being the board chair a couple of different times. And then the last time I was the board chair, that we were still it was just always a battle with the budget, cash flow, that kind of thing. And it kind of came up, like the Chattanooga YMCA would entertain us becoming a branch. And so we kind of went down that road, like, what would it look like? How would this work? We can't...
You were already a YMCA.
We were a Y, an independent Y.
So what does that mean?
So then we would basically go under the umbrella of the Chattanooga Y system. So they had their downtown Chattanooga Y, and then they have their Hamilton, Cleveland, all their different little Ys that go underneath.
So like a satellite Y under the Chattanooga leadership. Got it. Okay.
And so we kind of had lots of talks, lots of meetings with their board and our board, and discussions like, hey, a membership at the Y in Chattanooga is, I think at the time, was $70 at the low end for a family. Like, we can't, this community can't afford that, can we? And that got them into all the Ys. Well, most of the people in Rhea County are not going to go to another Y just because of distance. So can we, we did all that kind of footwork and lots of praying. And it just kind of is like, you know what, this is going to give us some stability that we haven't had, and access to training programs, gives us cash flow stability, access to some improvements that we can do that we wouldn't be able to do otherwise. And so we went ahead and merged. And that was for about 8 years, and that was good. It was a long time. And it went well, and we did grow, and we learned, and we figured some things out, and things got better. Financially in particular. So towards the end of that, we had Lamont, who was our local director, and we had another director out of Cleveland that was over us, and he took a new position with another Y, so he was moving up, which is kind of what our Y has always done. We're a small town Y, so we can grow some people and send them on their way. And so we had that position open, and we're advertising for it. And so the Chattanooga board, so we had an advisory board here in town. We didn't make all the rules. We just kind of advised. And then I had a position on their board in Chattanooga, and they wanted a meeting here, and we thought they were coming to say, hey, we're not going to fill Lamont's position. We're just going to let Lee out of Cleveland kind of, run your Y and think we can do this. That's totally what we thought. And we sat down to that meeting, and I don't think I have the best memory, but there's some things that you will never forget. And I remember sitting in the annex at the table, and they're like, okay, the reason we're here today is because we're closing your Y. And I think there was there was a gasp, an audible gasp of all our board members, because we had no idea it was even a possibility that could happen to us. And the reasoning was that, we weren't profitable enough, that we were a drain. But it's always kind of an interesting situation when you're a part of a bigger association. You pay a portion of your budget to that association, and I felt like, so it is what it is as far as them closing us. We had a really valuable YCAP program, which was with youth that were already kind of in trouble. And we're like, hey, that's separately funded. Can we keep that going? We've got kids enrolled. It's, we're going to have another semester of that. And they're like, nope, it's gone too. We're just like, whoa,
Man.
So, yeah, that was a big shock. And so we left the meeting in shock and tears and like, what are we going to do? Like, this is, we can't imagine a Rhea County without this YMCA, because we were the only organization providing swim lessons at the time, soccer, child watch, so families could work out. There were so many gaps that were going to be left behind. And so after we kind of recovered for a day or two, I remember going, the high school was playing a football game in Ottawa, and obviously it was towards the end of the season, so it must have been playoffs. I remember just sitting there watching this game, just like, what are we going to do? And that's when everybody on Facebook's like, we got to do something. So the community really stepped up, and we're like, what do we need to do to figure this out? That was the week before Thanksgiving of 2015.
Oh, man.
Yeah. So 6 weeks is basically what we had to figure out what we're going to do.
Before the first
day
of the next calendar year.
December 31st, 2015 was the last day the Y would be open in Dayton. And so we had 6 weeks.
That feels like they could have maybe given you a little bit more time. Or
something.
In a year, y'all need to figure something out or something like that.
And that was kind of a request we made. We're like, hey, can we have a little time to see what we can figure out? Yeah. But I think they had some pretty big business decisions they needed to make for their sake too, right? In hindsight's 2020. So you just kind of look back and think, well, and obviously at this point I can look back and like, this is exactly what the Lord had for us. Without a doubt, as hard as that 6 weeks was, and how much a lot of people sacrificed of their Thanksgiving and Christmas season, can't imagine not going a different way at this point. Because we're so healthy as a local nonprofit, and the main thing was the city had been so gracious in allowing us to use that building, the Y, to use that building since the 92, 3. It ended up kind of being like an interesting county city cooperative thing. It was a county building. It was sold to the city for a very, very small price. I just found all that paperwork in a safe that...
Really?
Yeah, John Blevins, amazing man, and his wife, also amazing. I don't know if you know the Blevinses.
I've heard of them.
Yeah. I want to be them when I grow up. But big, gigantic hearts. He had a safe of all the original paperwork from the building, so we were able to find that. It's kind of cool to thumb through all of that. And then the city then allowed the Y to use it for $1 a year.
Wow.
For the whole building, which is really cool to do for a nonprofit. So the first thing was,
talk to the city.
If we're going to figure something out, we got to go. And so I think it was me and probably Dennis Van Meter and David Holcomb. Maybe one other person went and met with, at the time, it was Gary Llewellyn was the mayor. And Tom Solomon was the city manager. And there may have been a council member there too. I can't remember. And sat in Gary's office, and we're like, here's what we got. And I remember Gary saying, well, you guys, we can't imagine anything else being in that building. You got to stay. We got to figure something out. What do we got to do?
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. Like no resistance. And everybody's on the same page. Like, this is good. This is good for our community. And we've got to figure out how to make it work. So we did. They said we can continue for $1 a year at that point in the building. And then, of course, the question is like, the Y's taking all their stuff. They took computers. They took membership logs. They took phones.
Surely you had some list of membership.
We did.
Yeah. Were you supposed to?
I didn't procure the list.
This sounds like a Mission Impossible heist. Someone sneaking in.
I'm not going to say who did, but we did have a little bit of a list.
Well, does this mean that you were supposed to be like technically without a list? That sounds terrible.
Yeah, technically we were not supposed to have any of their documents or computer stuff. Yeah.
Man.
Yeah.
Okay, that's incredible.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
so you got to find a list, figure out who.
So we spent,
members.
we spent most of December like letting our current members know, hey, here's our plan.
Mm-hmm.
So we got the building, like cool. Then it came to the equipment. Well, I always like to say we were kind of the redheaded stepchild of the Y system.
Mm-hmm.
So we just got everybody's hand-me-downs. If we got new equipment, it's because we fundraised for it ourselves. So like the strawberry chase, Jennifer and I started that. My goodness, it's probably been 19 years ago. We brought it back to life. It was a previous race that had died, and we brought it back to life. And that money is how we bought equipment. There was not a line item in the budget to get equipment. So we get Cleveland's equipment or downtown Chattanooga, and that's fine. So we're also like, well, do you really want to take all this equipment out and depreciate it? It's going to cost them way more money. This is equipment that's dying.
Yeah.
So Dennis actually went to, I can't remember who from the Y, and was like, look, this, what are you going to do with this equipment?
What are you going to do with this?
Right. So they sold it to us for $1.
Yes. Yes. Go Dennis.
I know.
Go Dennis. Yeah.
And so, but we couldn't buy it because we weren't a thing at this point. We weren't an entity at this point. So, I think the city bought it for $1. And then the next big thing was because we weren't a thing. So we filed for incorporation.
Yeah.
But then also we need to be a nonprofit. Well, you don't get a nonprofit in 6 weeks.
Very well aware. I was going to ask, like, how, so you probably submitted yourself under another nonprofit for a time?
We did. Yeah. So that's where David Holcomb, who his mother is, who was I just the Blevins, Linda Blevins, who I said I want to be when I grow up.
Yeah.
Has a huge Y background. He grew up in this Y, and then he managed a Y in St. Louis. And he was integral in figuring all this out. He had the documents. He helped us get all of our business stuff together, how to, even like our job descriptions. We altered Y job descriptions and policies and all that. So he works for Brian. And at the time, Brian was pretty much in charge of Fort Bluff and their 501c3. And so sat with him, Dr. Livesay, and they said, yep, we can umbrella you.
Wow.
So for the first 18 months, we were our Rhea County Community Center, our project of NACA, Fort Bluff.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. So there's even still some documents that we have that say a project of NACA. So we even, like their bookkeeper was our bookkeeper, but she did it separately for us. And during that time, we applied for our nonprofit status. So that's kind of how that works. So that fell into place. So building, equipment, nonprofit status, then we were a corporation. And then we kind of got to work on, we had the United Way came through and donated some money for us to get some computers. Ray EMS donated phones. I mean, it was just all these different people. It was beautiful coming together, like door after door after door just kept opening. Like we are going in the right direction.
This is a wonderful lifestyle.
Yeah.
Like great catastrophe met by the community.
Yeah, it's beautiful, right? And that's like what we're supposed to do here is redeem these messy things. And this was a messy thing that we could redeem. And so got all that under control. So December we spent, explaining to members what's going to happen. We had people start, because we got that corporation, we could start having people join. So we had people join and pay for a whole year. And,
Nice.
and so I've got, I think Rachel Jones, I have a picture of her with the first key tag that said RC3 on it. And that was in
Aw.
January. Yeah. She's the first one to have the key tag.
That's
After we
awesome.
found like the lowest end member management system ever. And I think we're all scarred for life from that system, but it's good. So December, we just try to get the word out and get people to come on board. And we had staff who were willing to take the risk, and stay on. And I'm like, we're going to try to pay you, especially like, front desk staff who were given a lot of hours. And that was, so then we had a board, and I was the board chair. And then we had various committees, and the board had a lot of work to do. Like, they did a lot of the work in setting everything up. It was very much a working board, a managing board, and still is, but not to the extent as it was in the early days. We had several who went through the building and made lists of what we needed to fix and what we needed to repair. The city was amazing. They're like, hey, we got to fix that roof. Yes, let's fix the roof because it was leaking all the time. And so everybody kind of built in. We had a guy that worked at Dillard that was very financially minded, and he helped get everything set up on that. So just a lot of different people building in to make something work that seemed impossible. And so when we opened on January 2nd, and we had members and we had equipment and we'd cleaned the building really well, and we'd set, we're like, here's what we want to do. We're not going to add anything new to what we're doing until we do what we're doing well. And we're going to be super friendly, and we're going to be super clean because we're in an old building. It generally looks dirty anyways. And those are kind of like the three things we wanted, and it was noticed pretty quick. Like, oh, this is different. It's different.
Oh, it was already almost even better?
Wow. Just different.
Yeah.
Right. So, so yeah, and that was kind of the beginning. And
What year was that again? Sorry.
2016. So yeah, January 2nd, or Tuesday was 8 years.
So my wife and I Annika and I moved here in 2016 in August.
Oh.
I did not know.
Yeah, we were just a baby.
That had just happened.
Yeah, we were still getting our feet wet. Oh man, the learning curve was gigantic because I don't have any experience running a nonprofit. You know, like I'm PT, whatever, homeschool mom at the time.
Did you try to hand it off, or like what was the dynamic there? Like how did you?
I loved it. I was in for it. So the joke in Memphis was, after I stopped working, or even when I was working, I tell Chris, like, when you start working, when you start, having your practice, I'm going to be a professional philanthropist. That is my goal. Had no idea what I was talking about, like what that would look like when we got here. But
that means cleaning exercise equipment.
yeah, dirty towels. But so that's kind of what happened. So because we were so new and we started, we had some people, give donations and membership. So we did have some money, but it wasn't like we were sitting with this bank account for emergency fund or any of that. We didn't feel comfortable paying a director. So we really didn't know, like, how's this going to go? So the plan was for me just to act like a director. And I could. Like, the Lord made a way for that. I was a homeschool mom. I wasn't working anywhere else. And I had some weird desire to do it at the time.
Perfect.
So,
perfect fit. How old was your youngest child at that point?
So 2016, Becca was 10.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good time.
Yeah.
That
so
seems
they're
like
a little bit,
good
they
spot.
weren't babies.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not like super hands-on, and they're getting pretty self-sufficient. So, so yeah. And, again, it was just miraculous how the community came together because they wanted this. And they still continue to come together. Like, our support is awesome from local businessmen and businesswomen and individuals and corporations. And then just the volunteer support. And then along the way, we've been able to add programs, as we felt like we could. And of course, there's been changes and there's been ups and downs and hard years and with any nonprofit.
COVID. I remember that was a scary moment.
Yeah, that was a lot. That was a lot of decision making. I think that was the hardest part. It's like, am I making the right decision? Like, should we be open? Should we be doing silver sneakers classes right now? Are we cleaning enough? How am I paying my staff? Is the PPP the right way to go?
Right.
Like, talk about out of my wheelhouse.
Yeah.
That's all that stuff. You just have to learn along the way, and you just have the right people to help you. And again,
I remember praying for y'all during that time.
Oh.
We had just signed up, I think, right at the beginning of 2020. That's when we had our third baby. And I'll talk about it a little bit more, but that was right when we signed up, and then everything closed. And it was like, well, we shouldn't be paying for a membership because we're not going. And then I was like, no, we should probably pay for a membership.
Yeah.
Thanks. And I expect a lot of people did that.
I would say a vast majority.
Yeah.
So at the time, Danielle was our membership supervisor. And so she and I would go into work when we were closed and field phone calls and emails and things like that to make sure if somebody needed, because also people were financially strapped during that time. So certainly if they needed to cancel their membership, we needed to do that. But at the same time, and we never stopped paying our employees either. So I'm like, this is rough. You know, they could have filed, but then we knew we were going to open back up. And they're like, how does that all work? That gets super hairy. And so we're like, let's just pay them. And then we just had them come in and clean a lot before we really opened. And everybody cleans. Like if they were scheduled, they just came in and cleaned. And even when before we added classes and we just let people work out, that was kind of the case too. And so, yeah, it was challenging.
Was it? I don't remember. Was it actually open at all to the public, or was it like, nah?
So we were closed, I think, for a period of 4 weeks. Completely closed.
Probably in like April.
Yep, April, May. It may have been a little bit longer than that. It was funny. We'd have people like text and call me like, hey,
you just let me in.
My husband, they'd be like, my husband really needs to work out. Can we just borrow a set of 20s? I promise I'll bring him back. So I'll be like, okay, I'll stick him out the back door. Just come get him and bring him back. Just make sure you bring him back. Because it was hard on people. If you didn't have equipment, you were not getting it because you couldn't order it. Everything was back ordered. Everybody's buying all the home equipment. They couldn't get it. But definitely a couple of workouts happened here and there, you know, from board and stuff. But then the cool part was while we were closed, our group exercise instructors would come in and film, like we live streamed our classes on Facebook.
Wow.
So of course, half the time they cut the music out, but Silver Sneakers did classes and then the other group exercise. So there was online, you know, so we kept people, and we did that for quite a while. I think Silver Sneakers was our biggest concern. And that was our biggest concern when they were going to close us, because no one else did senior fitness either. And that was a vibrant, vital group. And we've got to keep these people moving. Like they love it. They were the ones who really helped us get that annex space. And they asked the city for it, and they helped us get that. And they're so committed to staying fit and active. And we knew with COVID, like that was the key. Like if they went home and sat down, it was not going to be good. And so we were a little bit, I guess, risky in trying to keep the class going as long as we could. But they're also people who are wise. So I felt like if we offer the class and they don't feel comfortable, they're wise enough not to come. But if they feel comfortable, that's up to them.
Which I think that's the way to do it. That's just the way to do it. In hindsight is 2020, but it's like you should, be able to assess your own risk.
Yeah.
And because there's risk on either side, like you just said, like sitting on the couch does not come with no risk.
No. Yeah. And so we kept those classes going. And then when we had to close, because the state told us we had to close, I remember talking to the city and like, okay, is this legit? Like, this is what we need to do? And like, yeah, that's what we need to do. Okay. And we kept the classes going online. And then as soon as we came back and we felt like we were safe, we started those classes right back up. And there was still a lot of COVID left. And, most of us didn't get sick until after we opened back up. I think our family had it at the end of that year in December. But we didn't have one Silver Sneaker member hospitalized for COVID. Wow. And we have a lot, over 100, and they all stayed healthy. They may have had COVID, but not to the extent where they were hospitalized or really down and out. And I think that's because they committed to staying active, and they're amazing people. That's also something, if I ever transition out of the leadership role, I'll just go right and teach Silver Sneakers because there's really not much better. But that was cool. That was a cool part of COVID is like I felt like we helped those people stay healthy, the best that we could. But it was a challenge.
Running a nonprofit, especially a small nonprofit, can be really grueling. I've done that a lot myself. What was the vision? You've got to have a why that is like pushing you through what is otherwise. Without the why, it would be a miserable job.
Right.
I'm not saying you were miserable in the job, but it would be a miserable job for anyone who didn't have a big why. So like what what kept you going? I mean, first of all, in those early years, which is like, will this even work? Like, what kind of kept you going into work? And then during COVID, like, what was your why for making this a reality for the, keeping this as a reality for the area?
So our mission is building a healthy community with Christ as our cornerstone. So we kind of kept some of those values the Y had. So really that I've always known this is something that was important to the community and we needed to have it, but it's not something that a community our size would usually have. But to me, that allowing kids an outlet and adults and seniors an outlet to be active is really important with my physical therapy background, but also the community aspect of it. And I love my staff. I love that we have teenagers who are learning how to be good employees, and so we can send them on their way when they're done. But I think it really is just like, this is what community is supposed to function like, and that's what we're trying to do. So we got to see what we can do to make that work. And I'm also like, weirdly, like I don't give up easily on things. so I like a good challenge, and this was it's a good worthwhile challenge, I think. And when I talk to other people and other organizations, my vision is like somebody be in some sort of magazine about nonprofits. Not really, but like hypothetically speaking, of an example of what like a city and a nonprofit can do in partnership.
Yeah. To
have something you wouldn't otherwise have. So it's not just relying on the city to do the hard work of the community center. It's relying on this nonprofit that has some more leeway to do things a city can't do. We can get grants. We can, and the city doesn't necessarily want to wash towels and make sure, that kind of stuff is really tedious, and it takes a lot of staff and a lot of management. But if we can partner with the city and provide that in a healthy way, I think that's a really great way to do it. So we can have this thing that we wouldn't otherwise have. And then I just enjoy watching people have fun and enjoy being healthy. So, and it's something I committed to. So until the Lord says, nope. And I do know I need to be open-handed. Like I know it's not my RC3, right? I'm just a part of it. The Lord has put me in this place, and I need to be open-handed as much as possible. Yeah.
So. But it's been a good thing that you've clenched your teeth through a few hard times, because if you didn't, without that kind of leadership, it's very easy for something to just kind of fall apart. In the mission, I hear kind of two prongs. The first one is like a healthy community, and then with Christ as the cornerstone. What are there like specific goals about the health of the community? Are there numbers that you're looking at, or some kind of what are you shooting for?
Yeah. So this area in particular is considered a tier 4 in the state of Tennessee. And that means generally pretty unhealthy. Okay. So if you look at obesity rates and diet and things like that, we rank pretty low.
Is that out of 5?
Yeah, I believe so.
Out of 5 tiers?
5, yeah. Okay. It may be out of 4. This is all stuff I've come to know out of applying for grants. So we helped with the Pendergrass Park grant, the Healthy Spaces grant through Blue Cross Blue Shield. So I learned a lot through that. And then just being in the Deep South, or I guess it's not deep. Is this Deep South?
Yeah. I think it depends on who you ask. My wife thinks that the South ends at the northern border of Alabama. So when she moved to Tennessee, she thought she was going to become a Yankee.
That's definitely the South.
I was like, babe, that's not the North. You're in the deep South, like southern Alabama.
That's deep. I guess this is more South, but it's just.
But even still, probably pretty deep South, because the South is as far as Virginia.
Yeah.
So
and we're rural, access to things is different. And so, so looking at those statistics, and then kids in general and the trajectory life is taking kids, devices and, televisions and phones and gaming and all that stuff is really the impetus for having these healthy options to show these kids, like, let's get these healthy habits set now instead of you when you're 35, 40, 45, and you're like, oh my goodness, I've got to do something. I'm already have high blood pressure, but I don't know how to do it. So like, let's give these kids these, I can play tennis, or tennis. We don't do tennis very much, but I mean, we could. But soccer, volleyball, basketball, like I can do these things. Volleyball in particular, that was a program we added in 2018 was the first time we did that one. And that was because we had a dad who loved volleyball and was a coach. And he's like, hey, I think we can do a volleyball program here. And it was for the girls. And a lot of those girls who play volleyball don't think they're athletes. They don't want to be on a soccer field running however many miles is an average soccer game, or playing basketball, running up and down the court. But volleyball is so much more accessible and easy to learn. And then you see these girls come in not confident. They don't think they should be out there, and they learn how to play, and then they can play volleyball the rest of their lives. So that's kind of the thing with that part. And then, of course, I've already talked about the seniors, but then like young moms. It's hard when you first have a kid, and you're a new mom and you need a break. So having a child watch where I have a friend, you have a friend, we have a friend who has 6 kids, and she's like, I will pay $50 a month and go walk on a treadmill if I can get 10 hours of babysitting a week.
So this was our entry point. Do you know what a push present is? Have you heard of that? Push present?
Yes.
So whenever your wife gives birth, it's kind of a weird tradition, but like you have a present. You're like, way to go. Yeah. Good work. Here you go.
Good job having a baby.
Yeah, exactly. Good job having the baby. And a lot of times it's like jewelry or something. This sounds terrible. This sounds so bad. But my push present for my wife's 3rd child was an RC3 membership.
I think it's a great idea.
Of course
we should make that a thing.
Yeah, let's make it a tradition. And of course, that sounds terrible because like, hey, here's a workout, membership. But I was very clear. I was like, this isn't me pushing you to work out. This is because have you seen this childcare option? And it was, I won't even lie, it was like a lifeline. Like, and I have recommended it to so many young parents now. First of all the people who run and work for the childcare are just great. And it's amazing, especially if you're parents of like littles. Yeah. It is just to have some moments while you're working out of quiet, like reset. It was very, very important. So we have, encouraged all of our friends who've had, some babies and
now Anna Kat's teaching a spin class.
Well, honestly, the whole thing, it's your story. There's so many echoes because, you got into town. Where do I plug in? I've got these little kids and you started doing the why. It's like, so Anna Kat plugged into RC3. A big impetus for that was the childcare. Ended up falling into working out because she, like your volleyball girls, didn't ever really do sports. Right.
No, that was me. Like I barely did sports. Someone's like, you're so athletic. I'm like, no. I played middle school volleyball and water skied.
And I remember like she hated running. And
and she's running now.
Like 5Ks, 10Ks.
I started running when I was 32.
That's exactly our age. So it very much lockstep. But now she teaches cycling or spin.
And plugged into all those classes and like taking the classes have been, and I have to give Jennifer Van Meter credit for that. She ran those classes for years and just taught other people how to lead them and did a great job. Funny story about Child Watch. So I had the 4 and a 2-year-old when we moved here. Jennifer had, a 2-year-old. I don't know, somewhere in there. Our kids were close in age, and this is a couple of years after we'd been here. So maybe I had a 6 and a 4, and she had a 4 and a 2 or something like that. I had a 6, 4, and 1 or something. There was not a Child Watch when we were teaching classes.
And this would have been the Y?
This is the Y.
Yeah.
So there was not a Child Watch, but both of us had kids, and I taught 3 mornings a week. She taught, I don't know how many classes a week. So we hired someone
to just watch our kids.
So when you walk into RC3 now, we had it all renovated recently. Before it was renovated, there was that closet kind of thing you walk through. It wasn't a closet anymore. It used to be a closet. It used to be completely closed off with a door. And we made it into a half door, and that little area was child watch. So we put our kids in that little area.
In the closet.
With someone we hired to watch our kids so we could teach class. And that's where child watch started. So then the Y helped us develop that along the way. So then it was upstairs in the Group X room. We had a half wall where the bikes are. About the third of the room was child watch up there. Half wall could see the parents working out. And then after the great flood of 2017, we opted to move it into the annex space and share it with the Silver Sneakers. But yeah, those are good memories of just putting our kids in the closet with a hired hand.
Well, you got to start somewhere.
So we could teach.
Yeah. And I can't tell you just how much of a blessing it's been and continues to be. Like we're at RC3 like every day.
And I'm so glad.
Almost every day. Maybe not Sunday, but other than that, like pretty much every day.
Which is exciting because, we got to think about the future daunting because we need more space. And, at some point, because we are growing and I want to provide, we as a board, everybody wants to provide like the best that we can provide for our members. And at some point you're like, oh, how we do that? How do we do that at this point? So the renovations recently have helped a ton, made a big difference, but.
What's your vision for
my vision?
Yeah, like what do you see it growing into?
So I have a couple. This is funny. I was on steroids for a period of time because I was sick, or it was my back, and I don't sleep well with steroids, and so I had this vision.
Oh, actual vision. I'm going to sound
an actual vision,
an actual
and I drew
vision.
it out. So obviously the weight room is great. We're able to replace a lot of the equipment yearly, and we're almost to the point where the original stuff is almost completely gone, and it's still good equipment, which is fun. But I mean, we have maximized that space. Anytime
that's where I'm always at is the weight room, and it gets pretty packed. Not just with equipment, but people.
Yeah. And so we were like, how can we gain more space? And there's we've done just about everything we can. And someone's like, we should get this. I'm like, yep. Well, I mean, what are we gonna get rid of? Because what piece are we not using well? So that's one of the big issues. The other big issue is where child watch is not optimal. And we do after school programs, and a lot of people don't know that we have quite a bit of after school programs that are free. So we have Monday, Wednesday Spark program, which right now is in half the gym, and that is they come in, they get a snack, they play games, and they have a lesson that goes along with the games. And then Tuesdays and Thursdays we have tutoring, and so. The tutoring is happening in the space behind the United Way office currently. That's a shared space, United Way. That was really nice. They allowed us to use that when the Tennessee Highway Patrol office used to be in there and they moved out. So Tommy Solomon's like, hey, I think y'all could use that. So that's great, but it's kind of here. And then the child watch area has to remain open because when it's not child watch, it's Silver Sneakers. So we're pulling chairs out for these guys. So the Silver Sneakers don't have their designated space, which I think we could really use. Just their own space for their classes and for their fellowship times because we do meals and stuff. So child watch really needs a designated space where we could divide up age groups, put the other after school programs in the same space. So my vision is a challenge. Currently, the space next to us in the annex. So we got the main RC3 building, and then we have the strip annex. So it's us.
Landon's Alley,
yes. And then it's the annex space for child watch and Silver Sneakers. And then we have the Department of Human Services, and then the United Way.
United Way, yeah.
And then Chattanooga State fills the whole rest of the building, and then the American Job Corps and things like that. So ultimately, it would be beautiful to have the whole block.
Ooh.
But that involves, so the Boys and Girls Club is coming to town, and we've been working closely with them because we feel like a partnership is the right way to go with them.
Yeah.
And so the talk in Chattanooga State will eventually move to Delaware. To the amazing, that whole project's amazing, and what the county and city have done to bring that together is really cool. Then the Boys and Girls Club could use space, and then we could partner on space and partner on programs and all that.
And the Boys and Girls Club would be really helpful for a lot of after school programs, that kind of stuff. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
So we would partner in that, and just gives us a little bit more structure and all that good stuff. In the short term, it would be awesome if the Department of Human Services found a new home. That is hard.
So we gotta find a good building for them.
Yeah, it's a little pie in the sky. But then in the Boys and Girls Club, and we could share that space for child watch and after school programs until other space. And it's possible United Way they have stated they would like to move, so that space could come available. So that would be taking care of child watch, Silver Sneakers, and after school programs, all very valuable, important programs that need more space. That my really big dream, which people there's two more. David Holcomb is complicit in this, and so are some other people. But
you're not the only one to blame.
No, is the street that runs next to the main building's church, and there's the gravel parking lot, is to close that street and add on to the side of the building and add on a whole new, just big room just for fitness, and then the back becomes tumbling. So big dreams.
Oh, build on top of the street.
Yep.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's simple. Close the street. That was my steroid dream. I was like, I've got it.
That was
I know what to do.
Just push it over the road.
The entrance would be through the laundry room. We put locker rooms. We don't have main level locker rooms right now.
Yep.
Not great. The big thing that people talk about too in this community is a pool.
I know. I have poked some of the people involved at the Delaware expansion to consider trying to put one.
Yeah.
So you just mentioned like the really cool like Chat State moving over there, and that whole thing's amazing. I asked several people. I was like, I'll be talking to Cindy Horton. You know, what should I ask her about? Everyone was like, ask her about the Delaware stuff because she probably knows. So do you know?
So what I know is the city and county partner together buy the property. Mm-hmm. And then a portion of it, the Board of Regents from Tennessee is taking or has purchased to do this new TCAT building, which was pulled that location next to us, plus their welding location and one other TCAT. So everything will be centralized for Chattanooga State in that building.
Amazing.
And the renderings apparently are just amazing. Like it's going to be state of the art, which I think is going to be wonderful. There were murmurings of what could go in there. And there are some that I was like, if that is going to happen, I'm going to go lay in the middle of that field. Like I'm going to stage a protest. Well, it's a beautiful area. Mm-hmm. The mountain is gorgeous. The school setting is lovely. The Delaware complex is in a great spot. And so to think of something it was going to be like a large development. I just don't think it was the right spot.
Oh, you mean like a big residential? Yeah. Oh, gotcha.
And I just think that would just like congestion wise and just all that. So I think it was really wise for the county and the city to come together and purchase that. And then the Board of Regents from Tennessee then purchased the part that will put the Chattanooga State building on. And that's going to involve the Chattanooga State next to us, as well as the welding division they have in town and another TCAT division. They'll all come together.
So they will be pulling out of that location by y'all.
Yes.
So that's a vacancy.
Yeah, and apparently the goal is in the next 2 years. So it's not too far off. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that was the goal. And then for the rest of it, it was to deal with some of the youth sports issues that we have. Delaware is great, but it's, we have a soccer program at RC3 that has 250 rec players in it. That's just rec. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then you add the select teams in, that's another couple hundred. And then you've got baseball and softball, and so the space is just limited over there. And there's some opportunities for growth for our area too, if we were to put in some kind of sports complex over there. And so that's the plan. And everybody's asking, what about the barn? What about the barn? Like, the barn's not going. From what I have been told.
Yeah, I saw that.
From people who know.
There's a frenzied Facebook post about the barn.
From the people who know, they have said, no, the barn is staying. They want to preserve it.
Like an icon. Yeah.
Put try to put a concrete pad, underneath it so it can be a space to be used. And then there's some marshy area around there that I think the renderings are for there to be a raised walkway through that. So they're not going to disturb any of that. But then to put what they call rectangular sports fields in.
Sounds like a soccer field.
Soccer or flag football. That could be used, for either. And then a bathroom and a concession stand and that kind of thing. And the beauty of that is, as far as I know and what I've read in the paper and what I've been told, they've already secured the first grant towards doing some of that work from the state. I'm going to always get the letters wrong, but I think it's LRPF grant. that is specifically for developing things like this. Our select program does soccer tournaments. They do 3 or 4 a season, and Murfreesboro is the one we go to the most, and they have an amazing complex called Siegel, and that's exactly what they use is these LRPF funds to build these fields that not everybody comes to for tournaments. So the vision is long-term is can we provide some smaller tournaments? We're in a great location, Chattanooga, Knoxville, Atlanta's in 2 hours. Asheville's in a couple hours, then you got Cleveland and the smaller towns. You could provide a really nice little tournament done well. But at the end of the day, really it's for the community's use. These kids, they love the game and and then if we can grow football a little bit more, and who knows what programs could use the space. So I think it's amazing. And hopefully we'll keep moving forward. So I think in the spring, they'll start having some more meetings and figuring out exactly what it's going to look like and more drawings and things like that.
The one tenant that you're not sure about being able to find another spot, what did you say that was? The Department
of Human Services.
Human Services.
Yeah.
Have you talked to them about what their checklist would be for a new location?
Well, so the boots on the ground over there, that's really kind of out of their jurisdiction. So that's really a state level thing.
Gotcha.
So we understand this is the state and the building, I believe, was originally built for the state to use. So where our little spot is now used to house some other state offices, and where the United Way is used to house some other state offices. So it's been a blessing for us to even have that space. So we completely understand that. But in the grand scheme of things, is there a way that everybody can be happy? So we've talked to the city a little bit in the county, and what can we try to do? Is there another location they could be in that still benefits the city?
And that could potentially be a just as good or better location for them.
Right. Yeah. So, but the need is this after school programming. Right. This is the way society is moving. These kids need these programs in the afternoon. We do a program called U-Turn. We started I think it's been about 6 years. It was through the Care Center. Tiffany Soyster was at that time the leader of the educational part, the EDGE program. And they had access to a grant and a program that was for risk avoidance. And she came to me and she's like, hey, do you think we can partner in this? And let's go talk. At the time, it was to Judge Shannon Garrison about partnering with the juvenile court system and doing a program that they have to attend if they've been through juvenile court. I'm like, sure, let's go talk to him. And he was very amenable to it. And so we started it and we named it U-Turn, just basically that's our name. We came up with it.
Nice. Way to go.
I like naming things. So basically the idea of we're going to they've been through the juvenile court system. We want to turn them around. We want them to go a different direction. So we started that about 6 years ago. There's a boys group and a girls group, and they meet once a week. And now in our United Way space, it used to be in the kitchen of the annex, but now that's the baby room. So, and so they have educators from the Care Center come, and then we provide a meal. And we used to do some tutoring. We still do that sometimes. We provide the space, and the kids get a membership while they're in the program. It's a 10-week program. And basically it's a part of their sentence of sorts through the court system to come and complete this program. Right. And the parole officers keep up with them. So we have a good relationship with the parole officers. And we've had some good outcomes from that program, but that's the kind of stuff we need.
Absolutely.
And most of these kids are not doing terrible things. They're just not making good decisions, and they need to understand what a good decision is and how can you have a good life and make good decisions. You don't have to make these bad decisions in order to have a good life. You know what I mean? They're vaping in the bathroom, or they're calling it a bomb threat. These kids don't have a bomb. You know what I mean?
Right.
They're just looking for something. So
and maybe this is because I was hoping to have a callback to the idea of the mission being the healthy community and with Christ as the cornerstone. And maybe that's kind of where that comes in too, that second part of how have you been able to integrate faith into a nonprofit that's community oriented, that mainly focuses on health, but just trying to, do more than just that. Yep.
That's one of the most important things to us, is that at the end of the day, and we're not overtly proselytizing people,
right?
You
never walk in to work out and get preached at.
No, it's more of a an overall like philosophy, like how we do things. Like we want to be followers of Christ. And what does that look like in a nonprofit gym and community center? So it doesn't matter if you're currently a follower of Jesus, you're welcome, right? Everybody's welcome. And my employees don't sign a statement of faith or anything like that. It's more of how do we show Jesus to this community? And so the way we can do that through RC3 is root youth sports is one way. We do little devotions with them. So for instance, with soccer, and they all come for their game time. They warm up for a few minutes. We gather them all together. We do a devotion. It may be a silly way to remember the 10 Commandments or the fruit of the Spirit, something that they can memorize and just have in their pocket so that later on when they start thinking about things, they already have this baseline idea of who Jesus is and who God is and that they're loved, right? So, and then when it comes into like the U-Turn program, obviously the EDGE program is, they're a part of a Christian organization. So they're prayed for, they're ministered to, they're cared for. So, we'll try to do that with our members. If, we know someone's struggling, hey, how can we help? How can, try to even amongst our employees, how do we function in a way that's honoring to the Lord, but, again, not overtly, just like, you're wrong, you're sinning, not that kind of stuff at all. It's more of just like an overall, like, we are followers of Christ in this organization and we want to treat you the way that we should treat you.
Well, and that comes through so much because it creates a posture of love and service and betterment of the community. And I think that maybe, no shade at the YMCA, but I think that kind of commitment to selflessness and service is what has made it exist, like continued to push it through along with your leadership. And I don't know, I think that whenever people talk about being Jesus, representing Jesus to a community and to other people, hands and feet, so much of it comes down to hard work and serving people, like helping people. And I see that very much with all the work that y'all have done. And
my favorite stories are the ones that are like, even from when we were a Y, like coming to the after school program changed my life, right? Like they'll say that, like this has set me on a different path. So we get that even in our, my coach said this to me and that made all the difference. And, encouraging these coaches to really build into the kids' lives. Or, we've had moms who have kids with special needs and they're like, the Child Watch treated my kid like any other kid, and then a mom was able to like work off stress. Like I know, and I knew, especially as a younger mom, if I didn't work out, I was not a very good mom most of the time because I needed that stress relief. Still to this day, I know if I haven't worked out in 3 days because I'm just not as nice of a person as I should be. So that's kind of that. So you said earlier, what's my why? Like it's that kind of stuff. Like what needs are going to be met through this organization that are more eternal and long-term than just learning to play a game. It's not just about winning. It's not just about being the best athlete. It's like, how do we get these kids to a point where they are safe and loved and have opportunities they weren't going to have otherwise. So
I love that. One of the reasons I wanted to have you on at this point in time is because it's January and everyone has their New Year's resolutions and they're trying to work out, and I wanted to kind of get the word out there about RC3. And if people don't have a gym, or if they don't like the gym that they're going to, that maybe they should come to RC3. Is there, I think I remember there's like a discount.
There's a little bit of a special. So every year, what we started in the past couple of years is the first month, so January, you can join for whatever year it is. So it's $24 for your first month. So
nice.
We got, with COVID, that was one of the things, we got rid of joining fees. Just kind of felt arbitrary. It's like, like we don't, that's one more barrier, it's one more thing. So we got rid of joining fees. So it's just $24 for your first month and then just switches to your regular rate after that. So like a family membership, if there's no scholarshiping and no discounting, is $50 a month.
Cool.
And so it would be $24 your first month. So it's a little savings, a little incentive to get in there. But the cool thing is, like, there are no maintenance fees. There's no hidden fees. There's no contracts.
Yeah.
Like if you have a recurring monthly membership, we do ask for a 30 days notice. But other than that, we try to keep it really simple and accessible. And then if they do need financial assistance, it's very easy. And we're glad to do it. And that's why we have a strong community campaign every year that helps cover the cost of that. And we haven't changed our rates since we opened on membership, because
since you opened, you haven't changed your rates since
2016.
2016?
No, I fight that battle often.
That's
there
impressive.
may be a board member who's like, Cindy, I'm like, we want people to work out. Like,
my wife will kill me if I try to get you to raise your prices, but that means that you have discounted, and sure, keep going with that. That means that it is discounted 30, 40%. I'm saying with inflation, maybe 30% at this point.
No,
25%.
you're right. And it's something we've talked about, because is it better for RC3? And at some point we may have to do that. But if we can do what we're doing now, the way we're doing it successfully, then I'd prefer to raise money other ways.
I love it.
I want it to be as accessible as possible. And so if we have to go fundraise more money, I'll go fundraise more money.
Yeah.
But eventually we may, especially if we do entertain expansion.
Right.
Of course, it would make business sense that we have to raise rates in order to expand. But then, so financial assistance is really easy. And we do have discounts for teachers, state, federal workers, military. We try to honor all those people the best we can.
First responders?
All first responders. The hospital, we already have an agreement with them. The hospital actually has an incentive to be a member RC3, so they help a little bit.
That makes sense.
As well as Nokian. Nokian has that set up. And so, and then your $50 membership could be $45 if you have a discount, could be whatever it is. And then that automatically includes your child watch too. So, and then all the class. So I had a guy, a local guy, start today, and he's looking at the class schedule, and he's like, "So these are extra?" I'm like, "No, it's just one
this
thing.
Is included.
And
what about the childcare? How much is that per day?"
Yeah, right. And the only thing that you would pay extra for is the programs. So if your kid played soccer, but if you're a member, it's $30 less expensive for your kid to play soccer. So instead of $95, it's $65. And personal training. That's a little bit of an additional cost, but and we have amazing personal trainers.
Yeah.
Amazing Group X instructors. So, and we do challenges throughout the year. The next challenge starts on Monday, and it's you get your choice of either 4 classes a week or 5 30-minute cardio sessions a week. And you get a shirt when you finish. Everybody loves a shirt. You want a shirt? And then also bring a friend kind of situation, and we'll have a drawing. Every time you work out, you go into a drawing, and if you bring a friend, you get an extra drawing, and then we'll have prizes at the end. But really just trying to we waited to start because we have found the first week of January, you mentioned that you had a little bit of a brain fog. Everybody's just trying to get back to reality.
Yes,
the kids are going back to school. Yeah. You're going back to work. Everybody's kind of I'm not ready.
So let that wear off.
So we didn't even try to start a challenge on the first. They're like, let's wait to the 8th. And then that kind of gives people a little more leeway to be successful in that.
The 8th is, the 2nd, January 2nd of this year was your
8th birthday.
8th birthday.
Right.
But okay, gotcha.
Yeah, so the 8th is the start of the challenge.
The 8th is the start of the challenge, which is probably about when this podcast will come out. So that's perfect.
Well, fun.
There's never been a better time to sign up at RC3.
And then of course we do college memberships are less expensive, couples, seniors. We take just about any kind of insurance program that pays for memberships too, that's a lot of the silver sneakers. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah. I love it.
Yeah.
It's cool hearing the whole story. We've been going for several years now, and it's easy to take for granted how much work and how many sleepless nights and how much backstory a small town nonprofit has in order for someone like my family to just sign up one day and start working out and get healthy. It's
but the story is so cool,
mm-hmm.
right? So I said it's not like a whole new organization. It's just a new chapter in a book because these families were willing to invest money and time because they definitely invested money and definitely invested time.
Mm-hmm.
What, 40 years ago?
Yeah, exactly.
40? Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah.
40, almost 45 years ago. And so we're just continuing that on. It just looks different, with life, things just change. But it's the same idea, just in a different way, in a bigger way.
Yeah.
And definitely have had, with it being now outside of the Chattanooga Y system, having that local buy-in has been huge. Like, this is our organization,
our own,
which is something
Dayton
you have to
thing.
kind of make sure you keep up, because that kind of happened with the Y before it joined Chattanooga. Like, the community was like, I don't know, just it had been around for a while. And like you said, sometimes you take things for granted, and then when it falls apart, you're like, oh no.
We got to do something.
We have to help. We got, so that's the battle throughout even RC3's history is going to be, how do we keep people supportive of the idea of it and the mission of it, and not just, taking it for granted long term.
Well, I'm deeply grateful, and to RC3 and the people that started it and the people that have continued it, and for your work especially lately.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's a privilege.
Yeah. Well, thanks also for coming on.
Yeah, thank you. It's fun.
Yeah, very fun. It's always great to talk to you.
Very good. Thank you.